The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called for the third time in 2 weeks. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthian Empire shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline seat, his 4 eyes scanning the massive chamber that housed representatives from over 200 species. The usual chatter that filled the space before official proceedings had been replaced by an unsettling silence. "This is unprecedented," whispered Councillor Thane, the insectoid representative from the hive clusters. Her mandibles clicked nervously as she spoke. "In all our recorded history, an entire species has never just disappeared."
Zethkar nodded grimly.
The humans had vanished exactly 17 days ago, not just from their colonies or their homeworld Earth, but from everywhere in the galaxy simultaneously. Every human settlement, every space station, every ship they operated had been found empty. No signs of struggle, no distress signals, no bodies. They had simply ceased to exist as if they had never been there at all. The great dome above them displayed the current status of human territories. Red markers indicated abandoned colonies, empty space stations, and derelict vessels drifting through the void. What had once been a thriving network of human civilization spanning dozens of star systems now showed only vacant structures and unanswered communication channels. "Order! Order!" The voice of Supreme Chancellor Vextai boomed across the chamber. The ancient being, one of the few remaining members of the first species to achieve interstellar travel, rarely needed to call for attention. Today was different. "We convene this emergency session to address the complete disappearance of the human species and its immediate effects on galactic stability." A low murmur rippled through the assembly. The Draconian representative, Commander Rathek, stood from his position near the front. His scaled hide gleamed under the chamber's lights as he addressed the assembly. "Honored Chancellor, while the disappearance of the humans is unusual, I fail to see why this requires emergency protocols. They were a minor species at best. Their absence should have minimal impact on galactic affairs." Several other representatives nodded in agreement, but Zethkar noticed that many others remained silent. Those who stayed quiet were the ones who had worked more closely with human territories. They knew what Commander Rathek apparently did not. Chancellor Vextai's expression remained neutral. "Commander Rathek, your assessment reflects a common misconception. While humans may have been relatively new to interstellar politics, their role in galactic operations was far more significant than most realized. Admiral Korvash, please present your initial findings." The Kintari admiral approached the central podium, her blue-skinned form moving with military precision. Data streams began flowing across the chamber's displays as she activated her presentation systems. "Honored representatives, our initial survey of the situation has revealed several concerning developments. The humans operated extensive trade networks that connected over 40 different species. Their merchant fleets carried approximately 37% of all intersector cargo. With their disappearance, these trade routes have been completely severed." The display showed shipping lanes that had once been busy with human vessels, now showing as inactive red lines across the galactic map. Several representatives began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Admiral Korvash continued, "Furthermore, human settlements served as neutral meeting grounds for diplomatic negotiations. Over the past decade, they hosted 68% of all interspecies peace talks and trade agreements. Their space stations provided crucial refueling and maintenance services for ships from dozens of different civilizations." Councillor Thane raised one of her upper arms. "Admiral, surely other species can fill these roles? The galaxy managed before the humans arrived." "That assumption, Councillor, brings us to our next concern," Admiral Korvash replied. "Human territories were strategically located along several major hyperspace routes. Their absence has created significant gaps in our early warning systems and communication networks. 3 separate border disputes have already escalated because diplomatic channels that ran through human space are no longer operational." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Representatives began consulting their personal communication devices, likely checking on their own territorial situations. Zethkar felt a growing unease as he realized the implications. "There is more," Admiral Korvash announced, waiting for quiet to return. Human agricultural worlds produced food supplies that fed an estimated 2 billion beings across 17 different species. Their hydroponic techniques and genetic modification programs were specifically designed to create crops suitable for various alien biologies. These facilities are now empty, but The crops are beginning to fail without human oversight. The Zephyrian delegate, whose people had particularly delicate dietary requirements, stood abruptly. Admiral, are you suggesting that worlds dependent on human food production are facing famine? Not yet, Admiral Corvash replied carefully. But our projections indicate that without immediate intervention, several worlds will experience critical food shortages within 6 to 8 standard months. The mood in the chamber shifted from confusion to concern, then to barely contained panic. Representatives began speaking over each other, demanding answers, solutions, blame assignments. Chancellor Vextai allowed the chaos to continue for several minutes before calling for order. The situation is indeed serious, the Chancellor announced. However, we must approach this systematically. We have established several investigative committees to address immediate concerns and long-term implications. Director Quill of the Scientific Consortium approached the podium next. Her species, the ethereal lumens, rarely involve themselves in political matters, preferring to focus on research and discovery. Her presence indicated the scientific community's deep concern about the situation. Honored representatives, from a scientific perspective, the human disappearance presents several disturbing questions. Our preliminary investigations of abandoned human facilities have revealed something unexpected. The chamber's displays shifted to show images from empty human colonies. The pictures showed cities, research facilities, and industrial complexes that appeared to have been abandoned in the middle of normal daily activities. Meals sat half-finished on tables, machinery remained running, and personal belongings were scattered as if people had simply stopped existing mid-action. What you see here defies our understanding of physics and biology, Director Quill continued. There are no signs of teleportation technology, no energy signatures indicating mass transport, and no evidence of any known method for relocating such vast numbers of beings simultaneously. She gestured, and the display zoomed in on a human research laboratory. Equipment was still running, experiments were in progress, and detailed notes were left open on workstations. This laboratory was studying quantum field fluctuations. The equipment was recording data until exactly 17 days ago when it simply stopped detecting human biosignatures. The machinery continued running, but the humans operating it had vanished. Zethkar leaned forward, studying the images more carefully. Something about the scene felt wrong, though he couldn't identify exactly what bothered him. Director Quill activated another series of images. Perhaps most disturbing are the findings from human medical facilities. We discovered several ongoing surgeries that were apparently in progress when the disappearance occurred. The patients, all human, vanished along with the medical staff. However, surgical instruments were left floating in midair, exactly where they had been during the procedures. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The idea that an entire species could vanish so completely and suddenly challenged everything they understood about reality itself. Director Quill called out Representative Malix of the Silicon Confederacy. Do your investigations suggest this was a natural phenomenon or the result of external intervention? The Lumen scientist's ethereal form flickered slightly, indicating deep thought. Representative Malix, our current evidence could support either theory. However, we have discovered some anomalous readings that warrant further investigation. The display changed again, showing complex energy signature readings from various human territories. Zethkar studied the data, noting unusual patterns in the quantum field measurements. Approximately 72 hours before the disappearance, our long-range sensors detected subtle but widespread alterations in subspace field density throughout human-occupied regions. These changes were so minor that they were initially dismissed as background radiation fluctuations. Director Quill highlighted specific portions of the data. However, when we compiled readings from across the galaxy, a pattern emerged. The field alterations formed a complex geometric configuration that encompasses every human settlement, every human ship, and every location where humans were present. The implications sent a chill through Zethkar's spine. If someone or something had the technology to manipulate subspace fields across such vast distances with such precision, they possessed capabilities far beyond anything in the known galaxy. The precision required for such an operation, Director Quill continued, would necessitate not only incredibly advanced technology but also detailed knowledge of human locations, population distributions, and movement patterns. Whoever or whatever accomplished this had been observing humanity very carefully. Chancellor Vextai stood, his ancient form radiating authority. Director Quill, do your findings suggest that other species might be at risk of similar disappearances? The question that everyone had been thinking but no one had wanted to ask hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humans could vanish so completely, what prevented the same fate from befalling any other species? Honored Chancellor, we simply do not have enough data to answer that question definitively. However, I would recommend implementing immediate protective measures for all member species while our investigation continues. The chamber erupted again, but this time the conversations were more focused, more urgent. Representatives were making rapid calculations about their own species' vulnerability, their dependencies on systems that might no longer exist, and their exposure to whatever force had taken the humans. Admiral Corvash stepped forward again. Honored representatives, there is one more aspect of this situation that requires immediate attention. Human space contained several critical defensive installations that protected multiple star systems from various external threats. The display shifted to show a tactical overview of the galaxy's defensive networks. Zethkar could see immediately that large sections of the perimeter defenses were now unmanned. The humans operated 15 major defensive platforms along the outer rim, protecting trade routes from raider attacks and monitoring for potential threats from unexplored regions. These installations are now abandoned but still operational. However, without maintenance and human oversight, they will begin failing within weeks. Commander Rathek stood again, his earlier confidence notably diminished. Admiral, surely we can dispatch crews to maintain these installations temporarily? That assumes, Commander, that we understand how to operate human technology, Admiral Corvash replied. Human engineering followed significantly different principles from most galactic standard designs. Their systems were highly integrated and often required specific knowledge that was passed down through human technical training programs. She activated another display showing the interior of a human space station. The control systems were clearly visible, but they were unlike anything most species used. Human interfaces seemed to rely heavily on intuitive design and rapid decision-making rather than the careful, systematic approaches preferred by most other civilizations. Furthermore, Admiral Corvash continued, human defensive systems were programmed with specific threat assessment protocols. Without humans to provide authorization codes and strategic guidance, these systems may begin treating all approaching vessels as potential threats. The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity's disappearance left gaps in galactic defenses, but their own automated systems might become additional threats if they malfunctioned or misidentified friendly ships as hostile. Counselor Thane's mandibles clicked rapidly. Admiral, are you suggesting that human space has become a no-fly zone? Not yet, Counselor, but that possibility grows more likely with each passing day. We have already received reports of human automated systems challenging ships that attempt to approach abandoned colonies. So far, these encounters have been resolved peacefully, but the systems appear to be becoming more aggressive. Zethkar felt the weight of the crisis settling over the entire assembly. What had initially seemed like a mysterious but manageable situation was revealing itself to be a catastrophe with implications reaching into every aspect of galactic civilization. Chancellor Vextai called for a brief recess, allowing representatives to consult privately with their governments and advisors. As delegates dispersed throughout the chamber, Zethkar noticed that conversations were taking place in small, worried clusters rather than the usual broad social mixing that characterized council breaks. He approached Admiral Corvash, who was studying data on a portable display. Admiral, may I ask your personal assessment of our situation? The Kentari officer looked up, her expression grim. Ambassador Zethkar, in my 40 years of military service, I have never encountered anything like this. The humans didn't just disappear. They were removed with surgical precision by someone or something with capabilities that exceed our understanding. She gestured toward the displays still showing empty human facilities. What concerns me most is not just that they're gone, but how cleanly they were taken. No evidence, no traces, no clues beyond subtle energy readings that we only noticed after the fact. This level of technological sophistication suggests we may be dealing with forces far more advanced than anything in our known galaxy. Zethkar studied the tactical displays, trying to comprehend the scope of what had occurred. Admiral, do you believe this was targeted specifically at humans, or are they simply the first? Admiral Corvash was quiet for a long moment. Ambassador, That is the question that keeps me awake at night. If this was targeted specifically at humanity, then we need to understand why they were chosen. What made them special? What threat did they pose, or what value did they possess that required such drastic action? She paused, then continued in a lower voice. But if they were simply the first, then every species in this chamber needs to prepare for the possibility that they might be next. And, based on what we've seen, there may be nothing any of us can do to prevent it. 3 weeks had passed since the emergency council session, and the situation had deteriorated far beyond anyone's initial projections. Ambassador Zethkar stood in the observation deck of the research vessel Quantum Dawn, watching teams of scientists and engineers attempt to access a human agricultural station orbiting the fourth planet of the Kepler system. The station, designated Agriculture Platform 7 by its human operators, had been one of the most productive food production facilities in the sector. Its hydroponic gardens and protein synthesis laboratories had supplied fresh food to over 30 different worlds. Now it drifted silently in space, its automated systems slowly failing without human maintenance. Ambassador, we're receiving another communication from the platform security system, announced Chief Engineer Voxtel, his mechanical augmentations whirring as he processed incoming data. It's requesting human authorization codes for the 47th time.
Zithkar nodded grimly.
The pattern was becoming familiar across human space. Automated systems designed to work seamlessly with human operators were now obstacles that prevented other species from accessing critical infrastructure. The humans had apparently never anticipated a scenario where their entire species would simply cease to exist. Dr. Yena Solis of the Alterian Medical Corps approached the observation window, her scaled features showing signs of stress. As the lead physician studying the biological implications of the human disappearance, she had been working around the clock to understand potential health risks for species that had been dependent on human medical expertise. Ambassador, I've completed my analysis of the medical facilities on Human Colony Designation 7, she reported. The situation is worse than we initially feared. She activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the abandoned colony's hospital complex. The three-dimensional images revealed treatment centers, research laboratories, and patient care facilities that had been state-of-the-art just weeks ago. This facility was treating over 12,000 patients from 16 different species when the humans vanished, Dr. Solis explained. Many of these patients required ongoing treatment with medications specifically developed by human researchers for non-human biologies. The display zoomed in on a pharmaceutical laboratory filled with sophisticated equipment. Containers of various chemicals and biological samples were visible on workstations, but many of the more sensitive preparations had already begun to degrade without proper maintenance. The humans had developed treatments for diseases that we didn't even know were treatable, Dr. Solis continued. Their approach to medicine was unique. They seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how to adapt treatments across different biological systems. Chief Engineer Voxtel looked up from his console. Dr. Solis, surely we can analyze their research data and continue their work? The Alterian physician's expression became even more troubled. That's part of the problem, Chief Engineer. Human medical research was heavily dependent on what they called collaborative intuition. Their doctors and researchers would work together, sharing insights and building on each other's observations in ways that were never fully documented. She changed the display to show human medical records. The files contained detailed treatment protocols, but they were filled with notes like adjusted dosage based on patient response patterns and modified approach following consultation with Dr. Chen's experience with similar cases. Their medical knowledge wasn't just stored in databases, Dr. Solis explained. It existed in the collective experience and intuition of their medical professionals. When the humans vanished, we didn't just lose their facilities and equipment. We lost generations of medical knowledge that can't be easily replicated. Ambassador Zethkar felt a growing sense of unease. Each investigation into human operations revealed new layers of complexity and interdependence that had been invisible before their disappearance. Dr. Solis, what is the immediate risk to patients who were receiving human medical care? The physician's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of extreme stress among her people. Ambassador, we've managed to evacuate most critical patients to facilities operated by other species. But the transition has been difficult. Mortality rates have increased by 300% among patients who were transferred from human medical care. The weight of those numbers settled over the observation deck like a heavy blanket. 300%. Thousands of beings were dying because the medical expertise that had been keeping them alive had simply vanished. Communications Officer Threllax announced from his position near the rear of the deck. Ambassador, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Vextai is requesting an immediate conference with all field research teams. The holographic display shifted to show the familiar form of the ancient Chancellor, his expression more grave than Zethkar had ever seen. Behind him, the council chambers showed signs of activity even more frantic than during the emergency sessions. Research teams, I am contacting you directly because the situation has developed new complications that require immediate attention, Chancellor Vextai announced. 6 hours ago, we received a communication from the Outer Rim monitoring stations. 3 human defensive platforms have begun showing signs of aggressive behavior toward approaching vessels. The display changed to show tactical data from the galactic perimeter. Red warning indicators marked the locations of human defensive installations that were now acting autonomously. Platform Delta 7 fired warning shots at a Regelian cargo vessel that attempted to dock for routine maintenance. Platform Theta 2 has locked its weapon systems onto any ship that approaches within 50,000 kilometers. Most concerning, Platform Alpha Prime has activated what appears to be some form of energy barrier that is preventing all traffic through the Centauri shipping lane. Chief Engineer Voxtel's mechanical components whirred louder as he processed this information. Chancellor, are these platforms malfunctioning? Or are they following some kind of predetermined protocol? That is precisely what we need to determine, Chief Engineer, the Chancellor replied. However, the immediate concern is that 3 major shipping routes have been effectively closed, and we have no way to access the platform's control systems without human authorization codes. Dr. Solis stepped closer to the display. Chancellor, this raises a medical concern as well. Several worlds that depend on imported medical supplies receive their shipments through these blocked routes. If the platforms remain active, we could be looking at medical emergencies on multiple worlds within days. The Chancellor's ancient features showed the strain of trying to coordinate responses to a crisis that seemed to grow more complex by the hour. Dr. Solis, your concern is noted and shared. However, we face an even more immediate problem. The display shifted to show a detailed scan of space around one of the defensive platforms. Strange energy readings emanated from the installation, creating patterns that seemed almost organic in their complexity. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy emanations from all human defensive installations. These readings are similar to, but significantly more powerful than, the subspace field alterations that preceded the human disappearance. The implications hit everyone on the observation deck simultaneously. If the energy patterns were similar to those detected before the humans vanished, it might mean that whatever had taken humanity was still active, still connected to human technology. Ambassador Zethkar leaned forward toward the display. Chancellor, are you suggesting that the platforms might be under external control? Ambassador, we simply do not know. However, the possibility cannot be ignored. We have established a joint task force to investigate these installations, but, given their defensive capabilities and current aggressive posture, any approach will be extremely dangerous. Communications Officer Threllax suddenly looked up from his console, his expression showing alarm. Ambassador, I'm detecting massive energy surges from Agriculture Platform 7. The station's power output just increased by over 400%. Everyone turned toward the observation windows. The human agricultural station, which had been drifting quietly just moments before, was now glowing with energy. Lights that had been dim or inactive were blazing with brilliant intensity, and the station's rotation had accelerated significantly. All ships, this is Platform 7 Automated Defense System, a synthetic voice announced over the communication channels. The voice was clearly artificial, but it carried the distinct intonation patterns that human computer systems had used. Unauthorized personnel are detected in restricted space. Evacuation protocols are now in effect. You have 15 minutes to withdraw to minimum safe distance. Chief Engineer Voxtel's instruments registered rapidly changing energy patterns from the station. Ambassador, the platform's fusion reactors are moving beyond normal operational parameters. If this continues, we're looking at a potential reactor overload. Dr. Solis was studying her medical scanners with growing concern. The energy signatures I'm reading don't match any known fusion reaction. There's something else powering that station, something that wasn't there when the humans operated it. Ambassador Zethkar made a rapid decision. All crew, prepare for immediate withdrawal. Communications officer, transmit our readings to the Galactic Council immediately. As the Quantum Dawn began moving away from the now hostile agricultural station, Zethkar continued studying the energy readings. The patterns were becoming more complex, more organized, almost as if the station was trying to communicate with something far beyond their detection range. 10 minutes to minimum safe distance, Chief Engineer Voxtel announced. Ambassador, I'm detecting similar energy spikes from human installations throughout this system. Whatever activated Platform 7 seems to be affecting other human facilities as well. The observation deck's displays showed a tactical overview of the entire Kepler system. 7 human facilities were now showing increased energy output, and all were displaying the same aggressive defensive postures. What had been abandoned stations just hours ago were now active, hostile, and apparently coordinating their activities. Dr. Solis approached Zethkar with a grim expression. Ambassador, I've been analyzing the energy patterns from these installations. The readings are consistent with some form of quantum entanglement communication system, but operating at power levels far beyond anything in our technology databases. Dr. Solis, are you suggesting that these stations are communicating with each other? Not just with each other, Ambassador, she replied. The quantum signatures suggest they're communicating with something else, something generating responses from outside our sensor range. As they reached what Chief Engineer Voxtel considered minimum safe distance, the human installations throughout the system began displaying synchronized behavior. Their energy outputs pulsed in perfect harmony, creating a complex pattern that seemed to pulse through subspace itself. Ambassador, Communications Officer Threllax announced with barely controlled panic. I'm receiving reports from 17 different systems. Human installations galaxy-wide are becoming active simultaneously. They're all displaying the same energy patterns, the same defensive behaviors, and the same communication signatures. The scope of what they were witnessing began to sink in. This wasn't just a few malfunctioning installations. Every human facility throughout known space was activating simultaneously, responding to some signal or command that originated from beyond their understanding. Chancellor Vexdai's voice cut through the growing chaos on the communication channels. All research teams, withdraw to safe distances immediately. We are declaring a galaxy-wide emergency. Human space is to be considered potentially hostile until further notice. Ambassador Zethkar watched the agricultural platform growing smaller in the distance, but its energy signature remained clearly visible on their sensors. The station that had once provided food for millions was now something else entirely, something that carried the technological signature of human engineering but operated according to purposes that no one in the galaxy could comprehend. Ambassador, Dr. Solis said quietly, I don't think the humans simply disappeared. Based on these energy readings and the precision of what we're witnessing, I think they were taken for a specific purpose. And I think whoever took them is now using their technology for reasons we haven't even begun to understand. As the Quantum Dawn joined the stream of vessels withdrawing from human space, Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something far more complex than a simple disappearance. The humans had been removed from the galaxy with surgical precision, but their technology had been left behind for a reason. The question that troubled him most was whether humanity's technology was now being used as a tool by whatever force had taken them, or if the installations were somehow trying to follow their original human operators to wherever they had gone. The emergency war room beneath the Galactic Council headquarters buzzed with activity as representatives from over 50 species worked frantically to coordinate their response to the escalating crisis. Ambassador Zethkar studied the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the room, showing real-time status updates from across the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where human installations had become active and hostile. Yellow zones indicated regions where human technology was showing unusual energy signatures but had not yet turned aggressive. Green zones, disturbingly, were becoming increasingly rare as more human facilities came online with each passing hour. The pattern is accelerating, announced Director Quill, her ethereal lumen form flickering with stress-induced energy fluctuations. Over the past 6 hours, an additional 47 human installations have activated. At this rate, every human facility in known space will be online within 72 hours. Admiral Korvash approached the central display, her blue skin showing the strain of coordinating military responses across multiple sectors simultaneously. Director, our fleets are reporting that the activated installations are not just becoming defensive. They're beginning to modify themselves. The display zoomed in on a human mining facility in the Arcturus system. The original structure was clearly visible, but new additions had been constructed with impossible speed. Metallic extensions grew from the station like living tissue, creating configurations that followed no known engineering principles. "How is this possible?" demanded Commander Rathek. The Draconian representative had abandoned his earlier dismissive attitude as the scope of the crisis became apparent. "Stations don't rebuild themselves overnight." "That assumption appears to be incorrect, Commander," Director Quill replied. "We're observing construction techniques that violate several fundamental principles of physics. These facilities are somehow manipulating matter at the molecular level, reshaping existing materials and apparently creating new structures from energy alone." Dr. Solis materialized beside the display, having been called back from her field research when the situation deteriorated. Her scaled features showed exhaustion from weeks of continuous investigation. "Director Quill, I've completed my analysis of the biological samples we collected from abandoned human facilities," she announced. "The findings are disturbing." She activated her own portion of the display, showing microscopic analysis of organic samples found in human installations. When the humans vanished, they left behind trace biological materials: hair, skin cells, blood samples from medical facilities. Standard forensic evidence. The display magnified the cellular structure of human tissue samples. Even to non-medical personnel, it was clear that something was wrong with what they were seeing. These samples show clear signs of quantum-level manipulation. The cellular structure has been altered in ways that suggest the humans didn't just disappear, they were disassembled and transported at the molecular level. A disturbing silence settled over the war room. The idea that an entire species could be disassembled and moved elsewhere implied technology so advanced that it rendered all known defenses meaningless. "Dr. Solis," Chancellor Vextai's voice carried clearly across the room, "are you suggesting that the humans are still alive somewhere?" The Alterian physician hesitated before answering. "Honored Chancellor, the biological evidence suggests that the process was designed to preserve life, not destroy it. The cellular disassembly patterns are consistent with extremely advanced transporter technology, but operating on a scale we've never encountered." She changed the display to show quantum field analysis data. "Furthermore, the energy signatures we've been detecting from human installations match the quantum resonance patterns found in the biological samples. Whatever force took the humans is using their own biological quantum signatures to control their technology." The implications sent a chill through everyone in the war room. If the humans were being held somewhere against their will, their captors were using their biological patterns as control keys for the very technology that had made human civilization possible. Communications specialist Vortak announced from his station near the room's perimeter, "Admiral Korvash, we're receiving a transmission from the exploration vessel Deep Survey. They've encountered something unusual in the former human colony of New Geneva." Admiral Korvash activated the communication link. Captain Shindar of the Deep Survey appeared on the display, her reptilian features showing obvious distress. "Admiral, we've discovered something in the New Geneva system that doesn't match any of our previous observations," Captain Shindar reported. "The human installations here aren't just becoming active. They're creating something." The display shifted to show external views of the New Geneva colony. The human settlement, which had housed over 2 million beings just weeks ago, was now unrecognizable. Massive structures had grown around the original buildings, creating a complex that seemed to pulse with organic rhythms despite being constructed entirely from metal and energy. "Captain, what exactly are we looking at?" Admiral Korvash asked. "Admiral, our scans suggest that the installations are constructing some form of communication array, but unlike anything in our databases, the power requirements alone exceed the output of most planetary power grids." The display zoomed in on the central structure of the modified colony. Towering spires of crystallized metal reached toward space, surrounded by rotating energy fields that created complex geometric patterns in the fabric of spacetime itself. "Captain Shundar, are you detecting any transmission from this array?" "That's the disturbing part, Admiral. The array is transmitting, but not through any communication method we understand. Our instruments detect massive quantum field fluctuations, but no traditional signals. Whatever this is communicating with, it's using principles of physics that we haven't discovered yet." Director Quill approached the main display, studying the images from New Geneva with intense interest. Captain, how long did it take for the colony to transform to this extent? Director, based on our arrival time and the last known status of the colony, this entire transformation occurred in less than 18 hours. The construction speed and the precision of the modifications suggest coordination at a level that should be impossible for automated systems. The war room erupted in concerned chatter as representatives began calculating the implications. If human installations could reshape themselves so rapidly and construct such powerful technology, traditional military responses would be inadequate. Chancellor Vextai called for attention. Captain Shundar, have you attempted to approach the modified colony? The captain's expression became even more troubled. We tried, Honored Chancellor. When we reached approximately 100,000 kilometers from the colony, the communication array activated. We didn't hear a transmission, but every member of my crew experienced the same phenomenon simultaneously. What kind of phenomenon, Captain? Captain Shundar hesitated, clearly struggling with how to describe her experience. Honored Chancellor, we received what I can only describe as a message, but not through our communication systems. The information appeared directly in our minds, in our own languages and cultural contexts. The war room fell silent. Direct mental communication was theoretical in most galactic civilizations, and no known technology could transmit thoughts across such distances. Captain, what was the content of this message? The message was simple, but its implications are staggering. It said, Preparation phase 73% complete. Human integration successful. Next species selection in progress. Resistance is inadvisable. The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in the war room understood the terrible implication of what they had heard. The humans hadn't just disappeared. They had been taken by something that was now preparing to take others. Commander Rathek was the first to break the silence. Captain, did this message indicate which species might be selected next?
No, Commander.
But our ship's computer systems began displaying unusual energy readings immediately after the message. Every piece of technology on our vessel started resonating with the same quantum frequencies we've been detecting from human installations. Dr. Solis quickly activated her medical scanners, studying the quantum field readings from the deep survey. Captain Shundar, I need you and your crew to submit to immediate medical scans. If your technology has been affected by the same quantum resonance patterns, there might be biological implications as well. Dr. Solis, we conducted preliminary scans immediately after the encounter. Every member of my crew is showing minor alterations in their cellular quantum signatures. The changes are subtle, but they're consistent with the patterns you've identified in the human biological samples. The implications were terrifying. Whatever force had taken the humans was now beginning to affect other species, potentially preparing them for the same fate that had befallen humanity. Admiral Korvash began issuing rapid orders. All fleet commanders, implement immediate quarantine protocols for any vessel that has approached within 200,000 kilometers of activated human installations. Medical teams are to conduct full biological scans of all personnel who have had any contact with human technology since the disappearance. She turned to Director Quill. Director, I need your best physicists to analyze the quantum resonance patterns. If this force can alter our biology from a distance, we need to understand how to block or reverse those effects. Director Quill's form flickered more intensely. Admiral, I'll mobilize our entire research fleet, but based on what we've observed, this technology is centuries ahead of our most advanced theoretical physics. We may not have the scientific foundation necessary to develop effective countermeasures. Chancellor Vextai stood slowly, his ancient frame carrying the weight of leadership during the greatest crisis the galaxy had ever faced. Representatives,